My name is Adam Young. I'm the chair of ECOM, and I'll be your facilitator today to welcome this amazing presentation looking at early childhood education and learning. Before we open, just as a land acknowledgement, myself, I'm not in Toronto. I'm in the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe here in Ottawa. But for the land acknowledgement for the conference, just acknowledging the traditional territory on which the conference is being hosted. Many thousands of years, the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit have sought to walk gently on this land. The territory is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement for the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the lands and resources around the Great Lakes. This acknowledgement signals our desire to seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep respect, and is a starting point to remind us all to enact this work in our personal and professional lives. So again, welcome to this presentation today. Just as a note for all of you, we will be recording this presentation. So if you want to turn on your video or turn off your video, depending on your preference, of course, by all means, go ahead. Just note that it will be recorded. So we have three presenters today looking at exploring the national scope of outdoor nature-based early learning programs in Canada. This includes Debra Harwood, Elizabeth Boileau, and Karen Julien. So Elizabeth will be introducing her team a little bit more, but a little bit more about Elizabeth. She's a PhD candidate at Lakehead University, teaches early learning and childcare at Bow Valley College in Calgary, Alberta. Her research focuses on children's experience of empathy for the more than human world in a Canadian forest school program. So Elizabeth, take it away.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks so much for being here, for joining our session today. And it's nice to see some faces that that I personally don't, or not faces, but names, I guess, that I don't know. So I'd love to hear where you're from in the chat. And if you want to put a little quick note about, you know, where you work or why you're interested in the session, you can pop that in there while I get started. So we have a team today of researchers. I'll be presenting about our study, but Debra will be doing the screen share. Thank you, Debra. And I'll just wait till you pop that up there. All right, so yeah, welcome. In the next while, we want to share, excuse me, some details of a study that we conducted, exploring the scope of nature-based and early learning programs in Canada. So in our research team, there are four of us, myself, there we go, and then Ziad, Karen, and Debra. Our emails are there if ever you, yeah, Debra can just, do you want to just wave again? There we go. And Karen, there she is. So we're all here. I'm going to just do the sharing on behalf of the team. Ziad couldn't make it to the presentation, so he is not here today, but was an integral part of our group as well. Karen will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have questions or comments, you can put those in there. And we'll definitely hope to have a bit of time for conversation at the end as well. All right, so for our time today, these are the topics that we'll be looking at. We have about 40 minutes and we'll be discussing the scope of our research project, what we learned about outdoor nature-based education in Canada, and what are the next steps that we suggest in terms of continuing research in this area in Canada. Before we get started, we would like you to complete a Menti survey. So there's a link that Karen just posted in the chat, I believe. So you can follow that and put in the access code. Maybe you've done this. I know I had a session yesterday that was using Menti as well. So if you click on the link, put in the access code. The question that we're asking you is on the screen there. What are one or a few words that you can think of how children or students benefit from spending time in nature or from nature-based education programs? While everyone's filling that out, I'm gonna sort of take a look at the chat and what people posted about where they're from, out of curiosity. All right, we got someone from Montreal, Toronto, Cranbrook. Oh yeah, where we had our ecom conference a couple years ago. Um, oh, another Calgarian. Nice. And Darcy from Winnipeg. Awesome. So we have some results that are populating on the screen there that we were just kind of curious to get your ideas of that. So connection, exercising body and mind, multisensory learning. I'll give people another moment for that. Nice to see people joining from all across the country. It actually sort of reflects the study that we did that was pan-Canadian as well. So there should be something interesting for the various parts of Canada. So thank you for sharing some of those ideas. Definitely, those are some of the inspirations for our study. And we started looking into the literature on nature-based education. We found that there were a lot of publications, but not a lot of evidence from research. So there's a lot of like practitioner books or books that can help educators to lead activities outside and that kind of thing, but not a lot of evidence from research, especially Canadian. So there's a lot of books to guide practitioners, and then the published articles that do exist are mostly anecdotal or provide observational evidence, but not like quantitative or at sort of larger scale. In the US, they actually conducted a large scale survey study of nature based preschools in 2017. So we thought that was really interesting. And we didn't have anything like that in Canada. So that was also kind of an inspiration for us. Myself and Ziad Dabaja, who's not here right now, had conducted a small scale survey prior to this, but there hadn't been a large study. So we really needed to know what is going on in Canada in terms of nature-based learning and how can we collect that data. So for us, we found that this phrase from Tanya Gray really resonated. Outdoor learning isn't new, but is just newly important. So this seems really relevant in light of the pandemic, especially. But in Canada, outdoor nature-based education programs have received little research attention. So we thought there might be a sort of a black hole in terms of what we know and what we don't know in this area. So I'll tell you a bit more about the scope of what we actually did. Debra, thank you. So these are the two guiding questions you can see on the slide there. What are the features of Canadian outdoor and nature-based learning programs, and where are they geographically located? How are Canadian nature-based programs described in terms of pedagogies and curricula? So our research really sought to establish a baseline of information to help identify and understand the different contexts in which nature-based learning is happening in Canada. We used a definition of outdoor and nature-based learning as being something that's child-directed, play, and inquiry-based, and happens outdoors, where children go out on a regular and repeated basis. It was important to define this so that we would have educators that could match with that description to say, yes, we're doing that, and then to give us their information. Okay, so I'd like to share a few of our results with you from this survey study. So first, looking at who actually answered our online survey, well, actually we got 200 educators to respond from all across Canada. So there hasn't been a study of this scale before. And they represented 165 different programs across Canada. Our survey was conducted in 2019. But yeah, as Debra was mentioning at the beginning, like as with a lot of these sessions with the conference being postponed and so on, this is opportunity to share those results with you. So you can see in this graph that about half of the participants were early childhood educators, so that middle bar there. About 1/3 were trained forest school practitioners. And if you look at the one on the right, the majority of our participants stated that they did not have a course on environment or sustainability or outdoor play as part of their training to become teachers or to become educators. Okay. For this one, this gives us a sense of where the programs were located in terms of who answered our survey, which of course is important to keep in mind when we're analyzing our results. So most of the programs were located in Ontario, but we did get programs reported in each province and in the Yukon. No programs were reported in Nunavut or the Northwest Territories, but we did think that this might be sort of a limitation of recruitment and maybe a definition issue in terms of they might be doing sort of land-based education or other similar types and maybe didn't connect to our definition of nature-based outdoor learning. But anecdotally, we do know that there's programs in those territories as well. So this was kind of interesting. By asking how many participants there were in the different programs, we actually got an estimate of the number of children that participated in nature-based early learning programs over that school year of 2018 to 2019 was estimated to be 40,000 to 60,000 children. So it's definitely something that is happening in Canada, all around Canada. We were really excited to see a variation in the age groups that these programs were offered to. So typically, nature-based learning is associated with early childhood, but as you can see here, programs are also being offered to 6 to 9-year-olds, 10 to 12-year-olds, or even mixed ages. We also looked at the type of curriculum approaches that educators and teachers were using, and this was quite interesting as well. So as you can see on the bottom there, what's really stands out is that emergent curriculum is by far the most common, emergent including play-based curriculum. So that's what we typically see, as well as a mix of other approaches as well. Okay, so there are some strengths and gaps that we want to kind of point out regarding our study. We do find it great that we were able to get a clear picture of the curricular approaches, like the graph that I just discussed. And we did get insight into the principles that guide educators' philosophy. So we asked them to describe what their philosophy was, and we analyzed that open-ended question. However, on the flip side, we know that it was difficult to capture connections with local regulations and barriers. And we know that, of course, our study doesn't provide a complete picture of everything and all the programs that are going on, but it does provide a good snapshot, if you will. And our study was conducted before the pandemic. So we also know that things have changed a lot in the last year, and our results just don't unfortunately reflect that. Or maybe fortunately, because we could also, study it again and look at the difference. But in terms of what we're presenting here. All right. So we have another Menti activity for people to participate in. Please. So we've got the link there in the chat. Thank you, Karen, and the access code. Okay, the question is, I'm not sure if it'll say when they click on the link. It will, Debra? Okay, you're nodding. So basically, we want to ask you, which of the following principles are important for outdoor and nature-based teaching programs? So I'll read them out to you just while Debra's pulling it up there. So you can start thinking about it. So which of them do you think are sort of core or really important in these types of programs? Play and exploration, connecting children to nature, experiential and sensory learning, conservation and stewardship, Indigenous knowledge, and sustainability. So you can answer as many as you feel are appropriate. And then this will actually lead into some survey questions that we did ask educators. And Darcy says in the chat, all of the above, I see. So I'll give people a moment to click on the link there and choose any of those that you feel apply.
We made it a forced choice, Elizabeth. Sorry,
Okay.
we didn't put all of the above.
Okay. So they can pick one, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. So connecting children to nature seems to be the winner overall in terms of the sort of core principle, I guess, that would guide programs, and play and exploration. Interesting. All right. Well, as I mentioned, we did ask some of these questions to educators in our survey. For example, we asked them to explain what are the guiding principles of their program. And you can see on the left here what came out to be quite common after we did a coding analysis of this question was this idea of play and exploration and a child-centered curriculum. And what was interesting is that sustainability wasn't really mentioned here in terms of the educators didn't bring that up themselves, but we'll see that this will come up a little bit later. Yeah, so then we also asked educators in a separate question, which of these topics are being addressed in your programs? And here you can see in that middle one that sustainability was one of the topics that actually came out to be quite often discussed. So this is the number of responses. You can see that out of 160, I'm not sure what the total was, around 130 or 129 educators mentioned that. And then they actually discussed most of these topics, and maybe with climate change and environmental issues being a little bit less common. And when you think that these programs are even offered sometimes to 0 to 3 or 3 to 5-year-olds, that is quite interesting. So we did include a couple of quotes from our participants just to give you sort of a taste of their own words and their own perspective. So this participant wrote, yes, our goal is 3 hours every day. We have the appropriate gear no matter the weather, and we always try to go outside no matter what, and the kids determine how long we stay out. If the kids are fine, we stay out, even if us educators find it cold. LOL. So this was sort of relating to questions about weather. So I'll get into that section now and present to you some results that we have regarding regional winter weather influences and time outdoors. So we looked at how much time educators are spending outside with their groups. And here you can see the difference between the winter and the fall amount of time and the different regions. So we did kind of a regional analysis. So this is quite interesting. So the daily hours spent outside in the fall didn't really significantly differ across the regions. But during the winter, however, there were significant differences between the different regions. And of course, this is probably due to the widely different winter conditions in these different regions. And then here we can see that there are different temperature thresholds that educators use in their contexts to determine whether they are still going outside or not. So findings indicate that operating programs through Canada is possible, even in winter temperatures. These are the low reported temperature thresholds for programs. So for example, the time spent outdoors ranged from -4 to -30, and -20 was the most cited temperature threshold. But also a few participants communicated that extreme heat and humidity also impacted their time outdoors. In case you're curious, -4 was from the BC region as their threshold, and -30 from the Manitoba region. So those Winnipeggers in the session here can probably relate to that. All right. So in terms of strengths of -40, in terms of strengths of these programs, we feel that our results kind of help dispel some weather and other myths. For example, that programs in Canada are not possible in winter conditions. Well, we know that they are, and anecdotally we knew that they were, but it's important to get this research evidence to show that the great work that educators are doing. And then okay, and then we know that programs also provide holistic benefits for children, and that pedagogies and experiences that are offered in the programs varied a lot. And we have, more data on all of that, but we won't present to you all of the details on that. So here's another quote from one of our participants. The main benefit, without exception, is the mental well-being is improved in both students and staff who attend the program. Children with behavioral challenges attend forest school and have a markedly different ability to engage with their surroundings than they typically do in their classroom. Teachers who attend with a negative outlook on spending time outdoors, particularly in the winter, leave the program with almost unanimously altered mindsets, happy to have spent the time outside and looking forward to finding more time to be outdoors. So this was kind of an example to show you some of the holistic benefits that I mentioned in that previous slide. And then in terms of experiences, there was a tendency to emphasize exploratory play and loose parts and the learning of practical skills and risky play. So this is an example as well from a participant that wrote, "We have created our own loose parts, sticks, tree, cookies, found rocks, and plant material. We have scavenger hunt printouts, trail guides, bugs, birds, knots, ready every trip. We have equipment like ropes, tools, peelers, chisel, saw, art supplies and science tools, measuring tapes and magnifying glasses." So that gives kind of a sense of the typical materials and the type of activities that are occurring in these programs. One of the least reported activities was digital play. So not a lot of sort of technology use, I guess, within the programs, and walking or hiking over 3 kilometers, which we can imagine with groups of small children might be less common. So there remain a lot of questions to be explored, and our study has also brought to light some gaps in this field. For example, the fact that most participants had not had any specific courses on environmental and sustainability education as part of their post-secondary training. We also wonder how programs might better address issues of diversity and accessibility. Of course, our study being conducted prior to the pandemic means that we don't have data on how programs have adapted, changed over the last year. And we're curious about the connection to regulations and policies that might affect the functioning and administration of programs locally, which wasn't included in our survey. Ultimately, we feel that by better understanding nature-based outdoor education in Canada, we can work toward improving practice and ultimately providing more meaningful opportunities for children. That, of course, drives our desire to conduct research in this area. We do want to thank our community partner, the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada. They were helpful in disseminating our invitation to participate in the research, and you can also find an infographic of our survey results on their website in the research and policy tab of their site. That contain like some preliminary data. And if you're interested in a little bit more information, we do have a published article. You can see the link here. It's in the Journal of Outdoor and Environmental. Oh no, sorry, that was our other one. In the IJ Held, yeah, International Journal of Holistic Early Learning. Early Learning. Debra, help me out here. Isn't it?
I'm not sure what the acronym is, but it's IJ
Anyway.
held.
Yeah, there we go. And I believe you can access that one online. And then some other of interest references are here as well. We do also have another article in review that relates to this study and how it connects to the UN sustainability goals. That one's in review with a journal right now. So that was sort of a very brief snapshot. We got so much data in the survey, and we just chose to highlight a few little bits here, but we're interested in your comments, your questions, ideas for further studies or whatnot. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And it sounds like a great initiative. So we have quite a bit of time here for some questions, and I'm hoping we can have a bit more robust of a Q&A with Debra, Elizabeth, and Karen as well. And if there are any questions in the chat, feel free to go for it. I think I've just opened them up here to see. I see one from someone in Niagara here, Susan Elliott, saying, I'm in Niagara, what kind of training do teachers need?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess we certainly would advocate for sustainability and environmental education courses to be in pre-service teacher training and educator training. Right now, that's not happening very much, but we hope that will change. And then there is the forest school practitioner certificate that is offered through the Child and Nature Alliance that takes about a year. That's something that you can register for and take on your own additional training. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Susan, or if you want to specify a little bit more.
I think too that there's other opportunities, Susan, from a lot of different networks. So even just, because forest school practitioner course only happens so often, and it is a bit of a commitment, but there's lots of different organizations and agencies now, particularly during the pandemic. It's been so busy with things that you can attend. So Natural Curiosity in Toronto is one of an amazing resource to use and to connect to. Lots of different training through there. And then and I know if you're in Ontario, you're probably really familiar with Diane Cashin's work. So again, she hosts webinars on the ideas about outdoors. But just the other avenue to explore is just start reading as well, like reading some of the research, the reports, some of the different resources that are available. If you don't, I don't have any profits or connections to Natural Curiosity, so just put that out there. But if I would say, if you needed to spend money on one book, I would highly recommend their resource and their second edition. And that's where I kind of encourage all educators who are very interested in this kind of foray to go ahead and just start there. The other really nice resource that's come out from Beverly Dietz out here in BC is the Outdoor Play magazine. So it's a beautiful magazine that it has practitioner stories and, the full gamut of how do I start out? What do I do? How do I, organize children in the outdoors? How do I talk to parents? How do I get, muddy buddies? So that's another great resource that you could tap into.
Yeah, there's so much online learning opportunities. I agree. Can't even keep track of them all. Green Teacher, as well as the new outdoor learning store online, both have regular webinars and professional opportunities as well. Yeah.
Thanks, both of you. That's I'm sure everyone's writing down all these different links here and resources. So it's great to have them. I have a question for you, Elizabeth. Anything you're really surprised about from the findings? And as a supplemental to that, anything if you think that may have shifted in the span of since the pandemic? I know that's a bit of a fortune-telling scenario, but would there be something you think changed, or even just hearing people in the field during the pandemic trying to still teach early childhood education particularly?
Well, yeah, we discussed this, as a team a lot while we were analyzing things like what did we find interesting, what did we want to highlight, and what was surprising. And I mean, overall, it's not like this is anything that we were like, oh wow, like we had no idea. Like mostly it kind of reflects, what we already kind of knew to be happening in the field. Um, so anything that was surprising, I mean, I guess the regional difference in the weather thresholds is kind of interesting when you think that BC educators, stop going outside at -4 when when other places in Canada go a lot more. And then we thought that there might be um, well, I was interested to see the different age groups as well, because my area is more with the early years, and the stuff that I've read and everything has been more to do with preschool. So to see that outdoor and nature-based learning is happening at school age and even beyond, and even with family programs as well, were some of them I thought was quite interesting. But yeah, overall, I think the main thing that comes out of this is just that how in line this is with what is happening in other countries, and what we've seen in the research as well. Um, Karen or Deborah, do you want to add anything to what you found surprising?
Yeah, I think Elizabeth's right. I think what it helps do, it just kind of helps reaffirm where we are in Canada in terms of creating our own identity for early childhood or education or for outdoor movements. And like Elizabeth, I was really quite excited to see the number of teachers respond. Because of course, we don't have a national body to kind of recruit from. So it's a lot of, grassroots people hearing about the study and those types of things. So it was really quite refreshing to see teachers responding to the survey, as well as just the breadth of programs that we're operating, because you do become, as an educator, regardless in whatever context, you do become a little bit insular, and you think, or you think, I'm the only nature program doing this in my region, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, there is strength in numbers, and there's people that I can go to, as well as if you're just starting off and wondering, how do I do this now, within your own region there's people that you can reach out to kind of help foster that relationship. And how did you navigate parents, and how did you navigate the principal who says no, no, no? Now we have a collective body of stories that people can go to draw strength from. So again, it's just like Elizabeth said, it's just a snapshot in time, but it is our own Canadian-based research, which we really do need more of.
And in terms of what's changed maybe since the pandemic, that's an interesting one as well, that we, can't speak to data-wise, but I think what we've seen is definitely there's been so much interest in outdoor learning, and that's kind of come from the benefits of being outside and the fresh air and not being in indoor confined spaces. And in terms of the programs, like I can speak to a little bit of what I've seen here in Calgary. There has been an increase in demand for sure. Programs have expanded. And also the numbers, they have found ways to adapt. Like they have, a hand washing station that's on like a little trolley cart with a little bucket of water and, whatever, sanitizer. They'll have their mitts, and then they have their snack mitts. So they change their mitts to, like, just in terms of the health policies, like educators have found ways to work around and keep their programs going, which has been really, really exciting to see, because unlike, some schools that have had to close during the pandemic, outdoor programs that run as recreation programs, which a lot of them do here in Alberta, have been able to keep going. So I think that's really great to see. Darcy, go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry, I don't really have a question, but maybe just joining in this conversation because I find it really fascinating. So as I mentioned, I'm a landscape architect and not a teacher, but we work with schools and teachers and administrators and parent councils all the time to help create high quality outdoor environments. And I feel like many schools, especially in urban Winnipeg, really just don't have access to high quality outdoor environments. Oftentimes they're stripped of nature. They're very damaged. They sometimes, well, I'm sure like everywhere, emerald ash borer, Dutch elm disease, we're losing a lot of our trees and our urban canopy. So not to be a doomsdayer, but I feel like there is a lot of things against it. And I think that's why it's so critical right now to push this mandate of outdoor education. And I think over this conference, there's been so many great discussions about the supports for teachers, the time constraints of the traditional school system and how that really impacts learning, especially in the outdoor environment. And also just thinking about equity and sustainability and reconciliation. There's just so much. And I really do personally feel anyway that land-based learning is the way to connect all these pieces. There's not a clear answer to those big challenges, but I don't know. That's just me and my rant that I wanted to add in there.
Thank you. Regarding that last piece, I actually was surprised to see how much, I can't remember how we framed it, but Indigenous knowledge, I think, was included in the topics that we asked educators, like, are you covering this in your programs? And almost like the majority of them were. I thought that was a bit surprising. And I was, I think we were all pleased to see that that's actually happening in programs. But yeah, thanks for your comments.
Can I just say, Darcy, it's really great to have landscape architectures come to conferences like this. I was recently invited to a master's class in architect, and they were also designing spaces for young children. And it was so amazing to see the thought and care that was going into these plans for these spaces for children that incorporated the outdoors. And it was really quite amazing. And you're absolutely right. We do need to spend more time within education, particularly thinking about the outdoors. I'm not sure why or how it happened in history that we shifted towards focusing on what goes on in the four walls. But we need to, a lot of Elizabeth's research and some of the other panel, a lot of it is what we do is disrupting that kind of thinking. And so hearing that, yourself and others are attending from that perspective is really quite helpful. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I do agree that I think where you join in like interdisciplinary ideas is also where magic can happen, right? Like working with a nurse or working in, healthcare, bringing different aspects to a school is just, I don't know, there's so many things and so many ideas we can explore. United.
Yeah. And then Marina was asking, did the participants specify which were the natural spaces used? And like what kind of outdoor space? So this is something that actually Ziad and I had a survey question about this in our smaller study that we did before this large study, and we found it was about half and half in terms of private land or like city parks, but we didn't collect, I don't think we had a research question or a question on this in our study. Unless I'm forgetting.
No, what we did this time around was we let them define. So we provided the definition of what a nature-based outdoor program could be, but we didn't want to narrow the perspective. So we wanted people to self-identify if they saw themselves within that kind of definition. And because we really want to get away from the idea that nature-based learning can only happen in a forest, or it can only happen in the most idyllic kind of setting. Like here, there's a school in, here I'm in BC, there's a school in Tofino that operates on the beach. So we want to kind of dispel the idea that people from, inner city Toronto can't do a nature-based program because they don't have this idyllic setting. So we allowed the participants to define for themselves what kind of context they were working in, because, whether it's dandelions in the cracks in the sidewalk. We still want people to define that this is a nature-based program.
We asked like other related questions as well, like which kind of natural materials and loose parts were they using? That was an open-ended question. So lots and lots of ideas came out through that. And then we asked what type of program they were running. Like, is it as part of a school program, or is it as a full-time early learning program? So that kind of helps to provide a complete picture as well of what's going on. We just didn't, yeah, there were 20 survey questions. So I guess we probably included maybe a quarter of that in our presentation, but yeah, there are some other elements that we have that connect to that as well.
All right, we have time for 1 or 2 more questions if there's any, or comments, or.
So in the US, maybe I'll add while people are thinking that in the US, they were planning on doing, we had mentioned they did a survey study in 2017. They were planning on doing another one to, to follow up on that. And because of the pandemic, they didn't, but they did produce a snapshot, like a smaller sort of result or report, I guess. I think that one's in our reference as well, but I'm interested to see what comes out, although our programs are quite different from the US, but there's similarities as well culturally in a way. So I'm interested to see if they do produce another large scale survey and what that might mean for us in terms of continuing to assess our own situation here in Canada. I think that was such a good point, Debra, that you said, like, we have our own identity, our own way of running programs, and we wanted to know what does that look like here. So I hope that we'll continue to collect data on these different areas. I see the question popped up here. Did we collect any information on common barriers? Yeah, so there were some other elements, and they were like, we did ask an open-ended question that was weather related regarding the barriers. Karen, do you want to mention those other ones that I didn't talk about and that were in the picture of that slide really quick?
Yes, insects, prevalence of too many bugs would shut down the program. Air pollution was also a concern, and thunderstorms is another one that people mentioned. I don't recall physical barriers or mention of that kind of thing. Elizabeth, is there more?
I mean, in some of the comments, they did discuss, I guess, yeah, there were some comments regarding regulatory barriers, and we do know that that is definitely one of the main barriers. Are they, or can they get licensing? How can they run their programs? But yeah, we focused on sort of environmental barriers, I guess. Good question. Thank you, Taylor. All right.
Well, if there's nothing else, that's okay. We had a great discussion and so much information. So thank you all so much. As we just said, I'm so glad to see Canadian research on this topic. It's really wonderful news to hear and see all this synchronicity going through across all sorts of levels of environmental education, and the survey on climate change from LSF. You can start to see that there's so much great Canadian made and Canadian produced research that's helping us better understand the role and the opportunities, and of course the barriers too for EnviroEd across Canada. So thanks again for all of you for the incredible work. So in closing, thanks so much. Our next session will be starting at 2:30 sharp. And then we have another one, and then we've got the closing ceremony and around 4:30 or so. So